Hello, Mayor Ellis here. Welcome to my first video on Elk Ridge City. I'm doing the series of videos, or at least I intend to, with this being my first, on a little bit about how the city government runs. And the first set of videos are going to be about how we fund the various things that we do in the city. I've noticed that there's been a lot of individuals that have expressed themselves either in online comments or town council meeting, whatever the forum might be, about the budget, wanting to, give suggestions about how we could do certain things and whatnot. And that's appreciated to do. There's also a lot of comments online that are not necessarily would have the best interest in the city, but that's neither here nor there. What I want to do is, rather than talk about what's good, what's bad, I'm just going to go through about 3 or 4 videos. This first one here is just a high-level PowerPoint slide that will give you an indication or an understanding of how our budgeting works, so that when you come in to the city or to a city meeting or post things online, you'll be able to do it with more impact, because you'll have better understanding of what can and cannot be done, how things work, and those kind of things. So I'm going to run through this video. It's not going to take very long. None of the videos that I want to do will take very long. But the first video I'm going to do, this first video is going to be all about the various kinds of city funds and how it gets funded and whatnot. And then other videos will dive deeper into certain specific funds. So I'm going to bring up a PowerPoint slide. Give me a second here. On probably what people have in mind. I know I had this in mind when I first ran for city council, because I didn't understand how the funds work, the city finances work, and so this was kind of my understanding, and I think it's others, just based on some of the comments that are made. And as you can see here, the idea is that we've got a bunch of taxes that go in. We had a bunch of high fees that go in: water fees, sewer fees. The taxes are your property taxes, franchise taxes. There's a number of different kinds of taxes that we have in our budget. And then out of this city fund, we just sit down and we basically say, well, okay, we're going to do some roads, we're going to do some parks, fire and police, of course. We're going to fund the water and the sewer from all of this one big bucket of money that we end up with every year. And for most part, I think that's what most people probably see. But that's just not the way it works. And it's by state statute that it doesn't work this way. And I'm grateful for it, because this is a loosey-goosey kind of way of doing city finances. So what we really have is multiple funds. And on the left is this general fund. We'll talk about that here in just a minute. Then we have what we call enterprise fund. Enterprise funds are unique. They're tied directly to a specific service, if you will, in the city. And we have in Elk Ridge a water fund, a sewer fund, the storm drain fund, and the solid waste fund. And these enterprise funds exist in our budget financials. So we'll look at that in another video, and I'll go through and show you each one of these and the general fund. Now, a lot of people, including myself when I first began, not knowing anything, there's a lot of people who assume that we can move money from the water fund to the general fund. In fact, they probably don't even realize it, because they're probably back on the previous slide. But in this case, we can move money between the funds, and we can move money from general fund over to storm drain fund, and we can move funds from one enterprise fund to another enterprise fund. Yes, we can do that. We can do that. And in some cases we do that, which I will go into detail in another video. But in order to move money between these funds in any way, shape, or form, it requires two things. One, we have to have a public hearing where you can come in and voice your concern or approval. Hopefully you would have an understanding of why we would be doing the move. And we have to have city council approval. Now, the mayor doesn't approve this. It's not up to the mayor. The mayor might recommend it, but I don't approve any transfer of funds money between the funds. In fact, when we do anything like that, it really is a red flag. It's a penalty on the field, man. It's like something's wrong because you're either not funding it, you're overfunding of something, too many fees, too small fees, whatever the case may be, and you're trying to make it up. So anytime there's a public hearing on moving money like this, it is important to make sure that you understand why it's being done. We've done it rarely, but we do it. And this isn't the only time that we have to do budget amendments, and so therefore we have to have public hearings and council approve it. Sometimes we put money away previous years, and we need to bring that money into the general fund out of basically a savings account, and so we have to go through a public hearing and council approval for that as well. So that's a really big important thing. People need to, when you come in, or whoever, and you want to discuss water fund, when you start talking about, well, we're moving water fund to the sewer fund, or we're moving the storm drain fund to the general fund, or whatever the case may be, yeah, that might be true, but most of the time people come in and say, well, you're funding water with sewer money, or you're funding general fund with water money, or you're, taking the solid waste or the garbage truck, right, the garbage money, and we're subsidizing something else, blah, blah, blah. And that just doesn't happen because that requires that public hearing and council approval. What really happens, and if I take like the solid waste fund and look at that one in particular, yeah, it's a simple fund. It's a simple enterprise fund. Our funding source comes from our water bill. So in this case, our utility bill. In this case, utility bill and garbage, there's $13.90, $9.75, and 33 cents. That goes into the solid waste fund. That does not go into water. That does not go into general fund. That doesn't go into sewer fund. That goes into solid waste fund for the garbage. Same thing with storm drain. You'll notice all these match up. We have a water fund, enterprise fund, a sewer enterprise fund, and a storm drain enterprise fund, and then, of course, the solid waste fund. Now, what do we spend that money on? Remember, it can't just pop over to another fund. It can't just go over to the general fund without city council approval and a public hearing. And that is a big red flag, which in my administration, I have been very conscientious about doing any of that kind of fund transfers. Rarely is it ever done. In fact, I think there's only, outside of the original budget that we set every year, there's probably only one time I think we've done it. But we fund, we take that money, we pay the happy garbage guy, come to our house, pick up the trash. That trash then goes down to some landfill somewhere or to the recycling plant, whatever the case may be, and we have to pay that tipping fees. So that comes out of the fund. And we have some administrative expenses as well. Phone calls, there's contract negotiations, there's dealing with misplaced cans, and kind of being the interface between a lot of residents will call us, and then we'll work with our provider. So it takes some time. So there is some administrative fee that's associated with it, and that includes copy machine and some of the smaller incidental things. So that's the solid waste fund. Now, what I wanted to show here is that this is a really simple fund. You get into the water, you get into the other three funds actually, and particularly water. From that enterprise fund, whatever it is, you also have to maintain your existing system. We do, for instance, in the water, we do PRV maintenance on a regular basis. It's not a repair, it's just routine maintenance. But then there's water repairs, and there's repair and sewer, and there's repair and storm drain. So these other ones, we don't have any infrastructure in garbage, so we don't have any there. But the other ones, there's repairs. And there's replacement. So at some point in time, that something wears out and we have to replace it. That is accounted for. Then there's new investment that may be necessary to improve the system. And then, of course, we have an awful lot of equipment costs in some of the different areas that we charge fees for. So that's the solid waste fund. That's kind of representative of the whole enterprise fund kind of budgeting concept. Then we have the general fund. And the general fund is the only fund that is funded by our taxes. So sales tax, property tax, franchise tax, road tax. I know I'm missing some more. There's another couple if I remember right. That all goes into the general fund. And from the general fund, we do our roads and we do our parks and we spend on fire and our sheriff. We don't spend any money out of general fund on water, and we don't spend any money, sorry, I shouldn't say it that way. We don't spend any money to subsidize the water department. When we don't spend any or transfer any money to subsidize the sewer department. We just don't do it. And there is no arrow back either. There is no funding of the general fund using water money, fees in our water department. So it's a pretty clean system. The general fund of all funds is the most probably flexible in how we spend the money, but it is at the same time a fund that has an requirement to balance every year. So we make sure that everything that we do has to balance at the end of the year when we pass a budget. So that I just wanted to put out as kind of a basis for the next set of videos that I'm going to do. Hopefully it helps for people to understand that this is how it works. And the purpose of my next videos is to actually teach you or show you how to go into the financials, which we post every month, and look for yourself and see if we make a transfer or not. Check it out. See what we've allocated our taxes to and our water money to and whatnot. Because I think it's better that you understand how it works, so that you, if you're so inclined, can go look and see what's going on, as opposed to making comments that are not true and really exposing a gross amount of ignorance on how we have to manage the budgets in the city. And again, it's all by state statute. And the only other thing I'm going to point out is when we do budgets, we outsource a financial director, we call him. He's a CPA that works for our city and a number of other cities. He's worked in the state auditor's office and a number of other places. So he helps us put all this together, make sure that everything's copacetic. Then every year, at the end of the year, there's an independent auditor that comes in and audits all of our numbers and purchases and make sure everything is squeaky clean, and then files that with the state. And he's required to notify the state of any problems. So that's kind of the nutshell overview, and I hope that helps a little bit. I will get to my next video here in a little bit, and I'll see you on the other side.